Christmas adventure. The large logs crackled merrily in the wide fireplace, their snapping nearly drowned out by the clamor of 6 tireless voices. The young people gathered in the house were in high spirits, full of zest and anticipation of the Christmas festivities. Old Miss Endicott, known to most as Aunt Emily, smiled with indulgent patience as she listened to the general hubbub. "Bet you can't eat 6 mince pies all at once, Jane. I can sew." "No, you can't. If you do, you can have the orange slice from the sponge cake." "Yes, and 3 helpings of trifle, and 2 of Christmas pudding." "I do hope the pudding turns out well," Miss Endicott said with a touch of apprehension. "It was only made 3 days ago. Christmas pudding should be prepared long in advance. I remember as a child, for some reason, I thought to collect for the Sunday before Advent. Stir up, we beseech thee, O Lord, was somehow a divine instruction for mixing the pudding." As Miss Endicott spoke, the group fell into a polite silence. It wasn't that the younger generation held the slightest interest in her reminiscences of days gone by, but good manners dictated they attend to their hostess. The moment she finished, the previous clamor resumed. Miss Endicott sighed and, as if seeking sympathy, turned her gaze toward the only person in the room whose age more or less matched her own, a short man with a curiously egg-shaped head and a pair of fiercely bristling mustaches. "Young people aren't what they used to be," Miss Endicott mused. "In the old days, they would have sat quietly and respectfully, hanging on to every pearl of wisdom dropped by their elders. Now, it was nothing but senseless chatter, most of it entirely unintelligible. Still, never mind, they are all very sweet." Her gaze softened as it moved from one to another. Gangly, freckled Jane, little Nancy Cordell, with a striking, dark-eyed beauty. The 2 younger boys home for school holidays, Johnny and Eric, their friend Charlie Pease, and the fair, lovely Evelyn Hayworth. At the thought of Evelyn, Miss Endicott's brows drew together slightly. Her eyes flickered to where her eldest nephew, Roger, sat in moody silence, detached from the general fun, his eyes fixed on the girl, mesmerized by her delicate northern beauty. "The snow is top-notch, isn't it?" Johnny exclaimed, stepping toward the window. "Proper Christmas weather. I say, let's have a snowball fight. There's heaps of time before lunch, isn't there, Aunt Emily?" "Yes, dear. It will be at 2:00. In fact, I'd better go and see how they're laying the table." She hurried from the room. "I know what we'll do. We'll build a snowman." Jane cried, "Yes, wizard idea. I've got it. We'll make a statue of Monsieur Poirot. Do you hear that, Monsieur Poirot? The great detective Hercule Poirot, rendered in snow by 6 world-renowned sculptors." A playful spark lit up the eyes of the small gentleman in the armchair, and he gave a slight bow of appreciation. "Make him handsome, my children," he requested. "I insist upon it." "You bet." The whole party swept out of the room like a whirlwind, nearly colliding in the doorway with the stately butler, who was entering with a note on a tray. Recovering his dignity, the butler proceeded toward Poirot. The detective took the note and unfolded it. The butler withdrew. Poirot read the contents twice from beginning to end, then folded the paper and slipped it into his pocket. Not a single muscle moved in his face, though the message was strange indeed. Scrawled in a crude, unformed hand, it read, "Do not eat any of the plum pudding." "Very interesting," Monsieur Poirot murmured to himself, "and most unexpected." He looked toward the fireplace. Evelyn Hayworth had not left with the others. She sat staring into the fire, lost in thought, nervously twisting a ring on the middle finger of her left hand. "You are dreaming, mademoiselle," the little gentleman said at last. "And your dreams are not of the happiest, eh?" She started and looked at him hesitantly. Poirot gave an encouraging nod. "It is my business to see things as they are, and I see that you are unhappy. I, too, am not entirely joyful. Perhaps we might tell each other what is on our minds? For me, I am sad because a friend, a very old friend, has gone across the ocean to South America. Sometimes, when we were together, he tried my patience. His stupidity exasperated me. But now that we are parted, I remember only his virtues. Such is life, is it not? And what is it that troubles you, mademoiselle? You are not like me, old and alone. You are young and beautiful, and the one you love loves you. Oh, yes, it is so. I have watched him this past half hour. The girl flushed. You are speaking of Roger Endicott? But you are mistaken. I am not engaged to Roger at all. Yes, you are engaged to Mr. Oscar Levering. I am well aware of that. Why are you engaged to him if you love another? The girl seemed not at all offended by his question. Indeed, there was something in the man's manner that made it impossible to be angry with him. One could not resist the soft kindness and the quiet strength in his voice. Tell me everything, Poirot suggested gently, repeating the phrase that had a strangely calming effect on her. It is my business to see things as they are. I am so unhappy, Monsieur Poirot, so dreadfully unhappy, Evelyn began. You see, my family was once quite well off. I was to be a wealthy heiress, and Roger was only a younger son. I knew he cared for me, though he never said a word. And then he simply left for Australia. It is curious, the way you English arrange your marriages, Monsieur Poirot remarked. No order, no system. Everything is left to chance. Then we lost everything, Evelyn continued. My mother and I were left with almost nothing. We moved to a tiny cottage, barely making ends meet. And then Mother fell gravely ill. Her only hope was a difficult operation and a trip abroad to a warmer climate. But we had no money, Monsieur Poirot, no money at all. It meant my mother was destined to die. Mr. Levering had already proposed once or twice. He asked me again and promised he would do everything for her. I accepted. What else could I do? He kept his word. The best specialist of the day performed the surgery, and we spent the winter in Egypt. That was a year ago. Mother is strong and well now, and I am to marry Mr. Levering after Christmas. I see, said Poirot. And in that time, Mr. Rogers' elder brother has died, and Rogers returned home, only to find his dreams turned to dust. And yet, mademoiselle, you are not married yet. The Haywards do not break their promises, Monsieur Poirot. The girl replied with quiet dignity. She had barely finished when the door swung open. A large man with ruddy face, narrow, cunning eyes, and a balding head appeared on the threshold. Why are you moping in here? Evelyn, let's go for a stroll. Very well, Oscar. She rose obediently. Poirot also stood and inquired politely, And how is Mademoiselle Levering? Is she still indisposed? Yes, unfortunately, my sister is still in bed. Such a nuisance to be ill at Christmas. Indeed it is, the detective agreed courteously. A few minutes passed as Evelyn put on her winter boots, wrapped herself in a shawl, and followed her fiancé into the snow-covered garden. It was a perfect Christmas day, bright and bracing. The rest of the young people were busy building the snowman. Levering and Evelyn lingered to watch them. Love is a fairy tale dream. Johnny blurted out, launching a snowball at them with a war cry. What do you think of him, Evelyn? Jane shouted, Monsieur Hercule Poirot, the great detective. Just wait until we give him a mustache. Eric cut in. Nancy promised to snip off a lock of her hair for it. Vivant Lesbrave's Belgies. Boom, boom. Having a real-life sleuth in the house is grand. Charlie exclaimed. Now, if only we had a murder to solve. Yes, yes. Jane cried, dancing around the snowman. I have an idea. Let's stage a murder. A pretend one, of course. But we'll make him believe it. Come on, it'll be a lark. 5 voices began chattering at once. How shall we do it? Screams in the house? No. Stupid, right here in the snow. And footprints. Jane in her nightgown. We need red paint on your palm, then press it to your head. I wish we had a revolver. Father and Anna won't hear a thing. I tell you, their rooms are in the other wing. No, he'll be offended. He's a decent old sort. Right, what paint? Enamel? We can get some in the village. Not on Christmas, you oaf. Watercolors, then. Crimson Lake. Jane can be the victim. You won't freeze. It'll only take a second. No, let it be Nancy. Nancy has those smashing pajamas. Come on, let's go ask Graves where the paint is. The whole pack scrambled toward the house. Dark thoughts, Endicott? Levering asked with a thin, unpleasant smile. Roger started, as if waking from a trance. He had barely heard a word of the chaos around him. I was just thinking, he said quietly. Thinking? About what? About what Monsieur Poirot is actually doing here. His words seemed to catch Levering off guard. But at that moment the great gong sounded, and everyone headed in for Christmas dinner. In the dining room, the curtains were drawn back, and sunlight streamed through the windows, illuminating the long table decorated with crackers and festive trimmings. It was a true old-fashioned Christmas feast. At one end sat the squire himself, cheerful and red-faced. At the other, his sister. For this grand occasion, Monsieur Poirot had donned a red waistcoat, and with his plump figure and his habit of tilting his head to one side, he looked remarkably like a robin. The squire carved with practised speed, and everyone fell upon the turkey with gusto. When the remains of the two birds were cleared away, a hush fell over the room. Graves, the butler, made a solemn entrance, carrying the plum pudding aloft, a giant culinary fortress, flickering with blue flames. A joyous clamor broke out. Quick! Oh! The flame on my piece is going out. Hurry, Graves, while it's still burning, or my wish won't come true. In the commotion, no one noticed the curious expression on Poirot's face as he inspected the portion on his plate. No one saw the sharp, scanning look he gave those seated at the table. With a slight, puzzled knit of his brows, he began to eat. As the noise died down, the squire suddenly let out a strange cry. His face turned purple, and he clapped a hand to his cheek. "Confound it, Emily!" he roared. "How could you let the cook put glass in the pudding?" "Glass!" Miss Endicott cried in utter astonishment. The squire spat the offending object into his hand. "I could have broken a tooth," he grumbled, "or swallowed it and ended up with appendicitis." In front of each place setting was a small finger bowl of water, intended for the sixpences and charms usually found in the cake. Mr. Endicott dropped the shard into the water, rinsed it, and held it up to the light. "Good heavens!" he gasped. "It's a red stone from a cake decoration. May I?" Monsieur Poirot deftly plucked the object from the squire's fingers and examined it closely. As the squire had said, it was a large, ruby-colored stone. As Poirot turned it, the light danced across its facets. "I say," cried Eric, "what if it's real?" "Don't be thick," Jane said mockingly. "A ruby that size would be worth thousands, ever so many thousands, wouldn't Monsieur Poirot?" "It's simply past belief, the way they make these cracker trinkets nowadays," murmured Miss Endicott. "But however did it get into the pudding?" That, certainly, was the question of the hour. Every possible theory was put forward. Only Monsieur Poirot remained silent, but with an absent-minded air, as if his thoughts were elsewhere. He slipped the stone into his pocket. After dinner, he paid a visit to the kitchen. The cook was in quite a flutter. It was no small thing to be cross-examined by one of the guests, and a foreign gentleman at that. However, she did her best to answer his questions. "The puddings had been made 3 days ago, the day you arrived, sir." Everyone had come into the kitchen to take a turn at the stirring and make a wish. An old custom. Perhaps they didn't do such things abroad? Then the puddings were boiled and set in a row on the top shelf of the larder. Had this particular pudding been marked in any way to distinguish it from the others? No, she didn't think so. Except, perhaps, that it was in an aluminum basin, while the others were in china molds. Was it specifically intended for the Christmas table? "Funny you should ask that, sir," she said, her face darkening with indignation. "Actually, no. The Christmas pudding is always boiled in a large china mold with a raised pattern of holly leaves. Just that morning, Gladys, the maid I sent to fetch the dish for the final boil, managed to drop it and smash it to bits. And of course, I wouldn't send it to the table knowing there might be splinters in it. So I took the large aluminum basin instead." Monsieur Poirot thanked her for the explanation. He left the kitchen with a faint smile, looking thoroughly satisfied. His fingers toyed with an object in his right pocket. Early the next morning, he was jolted awake by Johnny's shout. "Monsieur Poirot! Monsieur Poirot! Do wake up! Something ghastly has happened." Poirot sat up in bed. He was wearing a nightcap. The contrast between his dignified features and the rakishly tilted cap might have been comical to anyone, but on Johnny, it seemed to produce an almost overwhelming effect. Had it not been for his words, one might have thought the boy was struggling to stifle a laugh. Strange sounds, suspiciously like a faulty soda siphon, drifted in from behind the door. "Please, come down quickly," Johnny continued in a slightly stammering voice. Someone's been murdered," he managed, averting his eyes. "Aha! Now that is serious," said Monsieur Poirot. He rose and, without any undue haste, completed his toilet. Then he followed Johnny down the stairs. The group of young people was huddled by the garden door, their faces alive with excitement. At the sight of Poirot, Eric was seized by a violent fit of choking. Jane stepped forward and laid a hand on Poirot's sleeve. "Look," she said, pointing toward the open door with a tragic gesture. "Mon Dieu!" cried Monsieur Poirot. "It is like a scene from a play." His remark was not misplaced. More snow had fallen during the night, and in the pale light of dawn, the world looked ghostly and white. The pristine blanket of snow was broken only by a vivid splash of scarlet in the center. Nancy Cordell lay motionless on the snow. She wore only her scarlet silk pajamas. Her small feet were bare and her arms were flung wide. Her head was turned to the side, her face hidden by a mass of dark hair. From the left side of the lifeless body protruded the hilt of a dagger, and beneath it, a dark crimson pool spread across the white ground. Poirot stepped into the snow. He did not go straight to the body, but moved along the path. 2 sets of tracks, a man's and a woman's, led to the scene of the tragedy. Only the man's tracks led back. Poirot stood on the path, thoughtfully stroking his chin. Suddenly, Oscar Levering rushed out of the house. "Good heavens!" he cried. "What is this?" His agitated state seemed odd compared to the stillness of the others. "It appears," Monsieur Poirot said sententiously, "to be a murder." Eric suffered another violent coughing fit. "We must do something," Levering exclaimed. "What?" "The only thing to be done," Poirot remarked, "is to notify the police." "Oh!" they all gasped in unison. Monsieur Poirot surveyed the young people with a searching look. "Undoubtedly," he confirmed. "It is the only proper course." "Who will go?" There was a brief pause. Then Johnny stepped forward. "The game's up," he announced. "I hope you won't be too cross with us, Monsieur Poirot. It's all a joke, you see. We stage it just to pull your leg. Nancy's only pretending." Poirot looked at him blankly, though a tiny spark flickered in his eyes for a second. "So, you are making fun of me?" he inquired serenely. "Yes, well, as I said, I'm awfully sorry. We shouldn't have done it. I apologize, really." "There is no need for you to apologize," Poirot said, his tone strangely meaningful. Johnny turned back toward the snow. "Come on, Nancy, get up," he shouted. "You're not going to lie there all day, are you?" But the figure on the snow did not stir. "Get up," Johnny called again. Nancy remained motionless, and a sudden, unreasoning fear seized the boy. He turned to Poirot. What's the matter? Why won't you get up?" "Come with me," Poirot ordered curtly. He strode out across the snow, waving the others back. He carefully skirted the area where the tracks were printed. The boy followed him, frightened and incredulous. Poirot knelt beside the girl's body, then beckoned to Johnny. "Touch her hands. Feel for a pulse." The boy bent down to check her wrist and recoiled with a cry. The hand was cold and stiff, and he could feel no sign of a pulse. "She's dead," he gasped. "But how? Why?" Monsieur Poirot left the first part unanswered. "Why?" he murmured thoughtfully. "That is interesting indeed." Suddenly, he reached across the girl's body and pulled out her other hand, which was clenched tightly around something. Both of them let out a gasp at the same time. In Nancy's palm, shimmering with fiery glints, lay the red stone. "Aha!" Poirot exclaimed. His hand flashed into his coat pocket with lightning speed, but he found it empty. The ruby stone from the cracker. Johnny stammered in amazement. Meanwhile, his companion bent down to examine the dagger and the red stain on the snow. Suddenly, Johnny found his voice again. "That's not blood, Monsieur Poirot. It's paint. Just paint," he shouted. Poirot drew himself up. "Yes," he confirmed calmly. "You are right. It is merely paint." "But then, how—" The boy broke off. Poirot finished the sentence for him. "How was she killed? That is what we must determine. Did she eat or drink anything this morning?" he asked as they retraced their steps toward the others. Johnny followed close behind. "She had a cup of tea," he replied. "Mr. Levering made it. He has a spirit stove in his room." Johnny's voice rang out clear and sharp. Levering caught his words. "I always travel with a spirit stove," he explained. "Most convenient thing, you know. It's been a godsend for my sister on this trip. One doesn't like to bother the servants every minute." Monsieur Poirot looked down, as if to soften a moment of awkwardness, and his gaze fell upon Mr. Levering's feet, clad in carpet slippers. "I see you have already changed your footwear," he remarked softly. Levering stared at him, his eyes narrowing. "But Monsieur Poirot," Jane pleaded, "what are we to do?" "There is only one thing to be done. As I said before, mademoiselle, summon the police." "I'll go," Levering shouted. "It won't take me a minute to get my boots on, and you lot shouldn't be standing out here in the cold half-dress." He vanished into the house. "How very thoughtful he is, this Mr. Levering," Poirot murmured mildly. "Shall we follow his advice? Should we wake father and then everyone else?" "No," Poirot said quickly. "That is quite unnecessary. Until the police arrive, nothing must be touched. So let's go inside, to the library. I have a little story I wish to tell, to distract you from these somber events." He led the way, and the others followed. "It is a story about a ruby," Monsieur Poirot began, settling himself comfortably in a velvet armchair. "A very famous ruby that belonged to a very famous man. I shall not give you his name, but he is one of the greatest personages on earth. Eh bien, this great man once arrived incognito in London, but though he was a person of importance, he was young and reckless, and he became entangled with a charming young lady. This charming person was not at all interested in the man, but she was very interested in his riches. So much so that one day she disappeared with the illustrious ruby that had been his family for generations. The poor young man was in a difficult position. His marriage to a princess of the blood royal was to take place shortly, and he did not want a scandal. So he did not go to the police. He came to me, Hercule Poirot. "Find my ruby," he pleaded. "Eh bien," Poirot continued. "I happen to know something of this young lady. She has a brother, and together they carry out very clever business. I learned by chance where they intended to spend their Christmas. And so, through the kindness of Mr. Endicott, with whom I am fortunately acquainted, I managed to be among the guests. However, when the young lady learned of my arrival, she became extremely agitated. She is clever, and she realized I was hunting for the ruby. She needed to hide it immediately in a safe place. And now, can you guess where she hid it? Precisely in the plum pudding. She, like everyone else, took part in the stirring of the puddings, and she dropped the stone into the mold that was different from the others, the one made of aluminum. By a strange quirk of fate, that was the very pudding served for a Christmas dinner. Everyone stared at him, mouse agape, momentarily forgetting the tragic events of the morning. Following that, the little gentleman went on. She took to her bed, claiming to be ill. He pulled out his watch and consulted it. The household is already astir. Mr. Levering is taking a long time to find the police. Is he not? I suspect his sister has departed with him. Evelyn jumped up with a cry, staring at Poirot. I also suspect, Poirot added, that they will not return. Oscar Levering has managed to evade justice for a long time, but that is over now. Perhaps he and his sister will continue their activities abroad for a while longer. Under different names, of course. I tempted him and frightened him at the same time this morning by dropping all pretense. He could seize the ruby and vanish while we were in the house, and he was supposedly running for the police. But in doing so, he has burned his bridges. His flight would have looked more than suspicious anyway, had there been a murder charge hanging over him. So he killed Nancy? Jane whispered. Poirot stood up. Shall we visit the scene of the crime once more? He suggested. The young people followed him out. But as soon as they stepped through the door, they all gasped in unison. There was no trace left of the tragedy. Everywhere lay soft, untrodden snow. Well, I say, Eric muttered, slowly sinking onto his step. Did we dream the whole thing? Truly extraordinary, remarked Monsieur Poirot. The mystery of the vanished body. A mischievous light danced in his eyes. Jane, gripped by a sudden suspicion, stepped toward him. Monsieur Poirot, you've been making fools of us all this time. Oh, I'm certain it was you. Quite right, my children. You see, I became aware of your little conspiracy, and in return, I arranged a little staging of my own. Ah, and here is Mademoiselle Nancy, safe and sound, I trust, after her brilliant performance in this comedy. And indeed, it was Nancy herself in the flesh, her eyes sparkling, looking hearty and in the best of health. Well, no cold? Did you drink the draught I sent to your room? Poirot asked sternly. I took a sip. It was enough. Everything is fine. Did I do it well, Monsieur Poirot? Oh, my arm is quite sore from that tourniquet. You were magnificent, Petite. But is it not time we explain our scheme to the others? They are still in a state of bewilderment. I see. So, Amias Enfant, I went to Mademoiselle Nancy, told her I had discovered your little complot, and asked if she would agree to play a part in my production. She carried it out very cleverly, Poirot continued. First, at her request, Mr. Levering prepared her a cup of tea. Then she arranged it so that he was the one to leave the footprints in the snow. Thus, when he concluded by some fatal chance that Nancy had actually died, I already had the means to terrify him. What happened when we returned to the house? Mademoiselle? He went downstairs with his sister. Nancy explained. He snatched the ruby from my hand, and both of them took to their heels as fast as they could go. But I say, Monsieur Poirot, what about the ruby? Eric cried. Do you mean to say you let them get away with it? Poirot's face fell. He gave a guilt-stricken smile under the reproachful glares of those around him. I shall find it yet, he attempted to protest, though he could see he had lost much ground in their eyes. I should think so, Johnny began heatedly, to let them just walk off with the ruby. But Jane was more perceptive. He's pulling our legs again, she exclaimed. Isn't that right, Monsieur Poirot? Feel in my left pocket, mademoiselle. Jane eagerly plunged her hand into his pocket and drew it out with a triumphant cry, holding high above her head a magnificent, deep red ruby. You see, Poirot explained, that other ruby was merely a paste, a copy I brought with me from London. Oh, aren't you a sly one? Jane cried in delight. There's one thing you haven't told us. Johnny cut in suddenly. How did you find out about our prank? Did Nancy peach on us? Poirot shook his head. Then how? It is my business. To see things as they are, Monsieur Poirot said, looking with a slight smile at Evelyn Haworth and Roger Endicott, who were walking away down the path together. Yes, but tell us anyway. Oh, please. Dear Monsieur Poirot, do tell us. He was surrounded on all sides by curious, impatient faces. Do you truly wish me to reveal this great mystery? Yes. I fear I cannot. But why? My foi, you will be too disappointed. Oh, come on. How did you know? Well, you see, I was sitting in the library, and you were discussing your plan right under the window, which was wide open. Is that all? Eric grumbled, indignant. So simple. Is it not? Poirot replied with a smile. At any rate, now we know everything. Jane concluded with satisfaction. Truly, Poirot murmured to himself as he headed toward the house. I do not, for one, though it is my business to see things as they are. And, for perhaps the 20th time, he pulled a crumpled scrap of paper from his pocket. Do not eat any of the plum pudding. Monsieur Poirot shook his head in bewilderment. At that moment, he heard a strange puffing sound at his feet. Looking down, he discovered a young creature in a colored cotton dress. In her left hand she held a dustpan, and in her right a brush. "And who might you be, mon enfant?" he inquired. "Annie Hicks, by your leave, sir," the scullery maid. Suddenly, a light dawned on Monsieur Poirot. He held out the note. "Did you write this, Annie?" "I mean no harm, sir." He smiled at her. "Of course not. Perhaps you will tell me all about it." "It was those two, sir, Mr. Levering and his sister. We can't abide 'em, and she weren't ill at all. Anyone will tell you that. So I thought there was something fishy, and I'll be honest with you, sir, I started listening at the door. I heard him say to her, just like that, 'We've got to get this Poirot out of the way as quick as can be.' And then he asks her, all meaningful like, 'Where did you put it?' And she says, 'In the pudding.' Well, I thought they were going to poison you with the Christmas pudding, and I didn't know what to do. Cook wouldn't listen to the likes of me. So I thought I'd write you a warning and put on the tray in the hall for Mr. Graves to bring to you." Annie stopped, catching her breath. Poirot regarded her gravely for a moment. "You read too many penny dreadfuls, Annie," he said at last. "But you have a kind heart and a bright head. When I return to London, I shall send you an excellent book on Lemonage, as well as the lives of the saints and another work concerning the economic position of women." Leaving Annie to continue her puffing and scrubbing, he turned and walked through the hall. Poirot intended to enter the library, but through the half-open door, he noticed two heads leaning close together, one fair, one dark. It made him pause. Suddenly, a pair of arms wound around his neck. "If you will stand under the mistletoe," came Jane's voice. "And me too," Nancy declared. Monsieur Poirot was glad, deeply, truly glad,